Ever get the feeling like your emotions are messing with you? Like that wave of frustration at the worst possible time.
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, what if those feelings are actually trying to, point you in the right direction?
Interesting.
Today we're going to dive into harnessing the power of your emotions.
Sounds kind of deep. I'm into it.
We're looking at this idea of an emotional guidance system. It's a concept from the work of Abraham Hicks.
Okay, I've heard of Abraham Hicks. So, how does this emotional guidance system thing actually work?
Well, it basically says that instead of emotions just being good or bad, they're like this inner compass, always pointing to what we want.
I like that, an inner compass.
Right. So instead of pushing away those not so fun feelings, we can learn to use them.
So it's like they're trying to tell us something.
Exactly.
Huh. Okay, so how do we learn to read those signals? That sounds kind of tricky.
Well, it starts with understanding that every emotion, from joy to despair, it all means something.
Okay, so even the really tough emotions.
Especially those, they're like the loudest signals, right? Telling us something is really off.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to be happy all the time.
No, not at all. It's about learning to listen to the full spectrum of emotions.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Where do we even start with all these feelings?
So we're talking about this whole emotional scale thing and how even those tougher emotions are trying to tell us something. But how do we actually listen? What's the first step to figuring out what our emotions are saying?
Well, it all starts with, just noticing. Checking in with yourself regularly and being like, all right, what am I feeling right now?
Okay, so no judging, just noticing. But then what?
Then it's not about labeling the feeling as good or bad. It's more about seeing where it fits on that emotional scale we were talking about.
Okay, so say I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed. Not full on panic mode, but definitely not feeling super joyful either. Where does that land on the scale? And what's it trying to tell me?
So if we picture that scale, right? Joy and contentment up high, despair and powerlessness way down low. Overwhelm usually hangs out somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning towards the lower end a bit.
Makes sense.
It's often a sign that you might be, juggling a bit too much, or maybe feeling a little out of control in some part of your life.
Okay, that tracks. But knowing that doesn't just magically make the feeling vanish. So how do we actually shift from feeling overwhelmed to something a little less intense?
This is where it gets really interesting. The source material talks about the power of what they call finding a better feeling thought.
A better feeling thought.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be some huge leap from overwhelm to pure bliss either. Even a small shift in perspective can start to nudge you up that emotional scale.
So baby steps towards better vibes.
Exactly.
Small steps.
I can get on board with that. Got any examples, though, of what these better feeling thoughts might actually sound like in real life? For sure.
Yeah.
Let's stick with that feeling of overwhelm. So instead of getting stuck in that thought spiral of, I can't handle this is too much, which just kind of digs you deeper.
Done there.
Right. So instead of that, try something like, okay, I'm doing my best one step at a time, or even just, you know what? I'm open to asking for some help with this.
Okay, yeah. See, those feel way more doable than trying to convince myself everything's perfect when it's really not.
Exactly. It's about being real with where you're at emotionally and then intentionally choosing a thought that just feels a little bit better, a little lighter.
So we're basically teaching our brains to look for solutions instead of getting stuck in the problem itself.
You got it.
This is making me realize how much power we actually have over how we feel.
It's pretty amazing, right?
It is, but I imagine it takes practice to really get the hang of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a skill.
Yeah.
The source material really emphasizes that, we don't have to become masters of our emotions overnight. It's a process.
Yeah. Okay, so less pressure to be perfectly zen all the time and more just celebrating those small wins as we learn to navigate all these feelings.
Totally.
I like it. Now, I know you've got a whole toolbox of practical tips. So let's talk about some specific tools people can use to actually put this into practice. What are some of the things this source material recommends?
One that I found super interesting is called the Rampage of Appreciation. Now, before you picture anything too crazy.
No actual rampaging.
No rampaging involved. It's more about making a conscious shift in your focus towards gratitude.
Okay, so a gratitude journal, but next level.
Yeah, kind of. It's about really letting yourself soak in that feeling of appreciation. Write down anything and everything you can think of that brings you even a little spark of joy.
I'm liking the sound of this.
It could be as simple as, you know what, I had a really delicious cup of coffee this morning, or my friend sent me a really thoughtful text yesterday.
See, that's doable.
Right. By really focusing on those good things, you're intentionally raising your, that vibrational frequency we were talking about.
Right, right.
And as we've talked about, that can have a ripple effect on everything
It's
else.
like a chain reaction of good vibes.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay, what other tools can we add to our emotional toolkit?
Another one I found helpful is something called the focus wheel. Have you ever noticed how your mind can just get stuck replaying a problem over and over?
Oh my gosh, my brain could win awards for its worry loops. Tell me about it.
Right. Well, the focus wheel is designed to help break free from those negative thought cycles. So picture a circle divided into like segments, right?
Okay, got it.
In the center, you write down whatever problem is really consuming your thoughts at that moment. Then, in each segment around the problem, you write down things about the situation that are actually working in your favor, or just things you can find to appreciate, even in the midst of the challenge.
So it's about shifting your focus from what's wrong to what's right, even if it's just tiny little glimmers of good.
Yes, exactly that. By consciously choosing to look at those more positive aspects, you're gently guiding your energy back up that emotional scale, even if the problem itself hasn't totally disappeared yet.
It's like training your brain to look for the good even when things feel kind of messy.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Are there any other tools from this material that we can try out? Okay, so we were talking about those tools to help us, work with our emotions. We talked about the Rampage of Appreciation and the focus wheel. Is there one more we can dig into?
There's one more technique that came to mind. I think you'll find it pretty useful. It's called segment intending.
Segment intending. Okay, what's that all about?
So it's all about setting the emotional tone before something even happens.
So choosing how I want to feel before I even get there.
Yeah, exactly. Like say you have to give a big presentation at work, right?
Oh, been there.
Instead of letting your mind go crazy with all the what ifs and things that could go wrong,
Yeah.
you take a little time beforehand to decide how do I actually want to feel during this presentation?
Okay, interesting. So instead of picturing everything going wrong, I'm picturing it going right.
That's one way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even more than just picturing a good outcome. It's about choosing the actual energy you want to have during the experience. Maybe you want to feel confident and articulate, or maybe really connected to your audience, whatever feels good. By setting that intention beforehand, it's almost like you're, paving the emotional road ahead of time.
I love that analogy. So I'm basically setting myself up for success before I even start.
Exactly. You're making it way more likely that you actually experience it through that, chosen lens.
Wow. What I'm really getting from all of this is that it's not about denying our emotions or pretending to be happy all the time. It's more about understanding that we have this inner guidance system and we can actually learn to use it.
Absolutely. And the more we use it, the better we get at it.
It's like any skill, right? Practice makes progress.
Exactly. And there will be days when you totally forget about your focus wheel and end up knee deep in a worry spiral. And that's totally okay.
It's all part of the process, right?
Totally. For me, this whole deep dive has really shown me that emotions are not the enemy. They're not random, and they're definitely not something to be afraid of.
They're like messengers, right? Just trying to get our attention.
Yes, guiding us towards a more fulfilling and joyful experience.
I love that. So to wrap things up, the next time you feel that wave of emotion hitting you, take a breath. See if you can figure out what it's trying to tell you. And remember, you have the power to choose a more positive thought. Who knows? Maybe as you learn to trust that inner compass, you'll find that the most amazing adventures are waiting for you.